and welcome to the program City Pulse on Housing TV Africa. City Pulse is a program brought to you by the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners, an association recognized in Nigeria and globally. I am Phoebe Onwabuije, your anchor for today. And on today's program, we will be discussing the role of public conveniences in urban livability. I won't be doing this alone, as I will be having join me in the studio right after this break an expert in the built environment in person of town planner Mohammed Lawal Shuaibu. Please stay with us.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts on Facebook, Housing TV Africa, on Twitter, Housing TV Africa, Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.
Thank you for joining us. Just before we went on that short break, I was about introducing to you my guest in the studio in person of town planner Mohammed Lawal Shuaibu. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Okay, so on today's program we will be discussing public conveniences in urban livability. Let's quickly start by looking at how available are these public conveniences in Nigeria? How available are they and how accessible are they to Nigerian citizens?
Well, first we need to kind of establish what public conveniences are. These are just public toilets that, well, not just toilets, but toilets, showers, water, sanitation facilities that are available for the public to use in public spaces to relieve themselves or for whatever other use. Well, the short answer to that question is that we don't have enough of them, right? They are not as available as they should be. Public conveniences are something that should be available to every citizen within walking distance of about 800 meters, right? That's about a 5-minute walk. So I should be able to walk from wherever I am within an urban environment to a public convenience, but that's not the case. Taking Abuja for example, we have some public conveniences at some major locations like the Berger roundabout, the area 1 junction, some strategic locations fair, but this is not sufficient, right? Public conveniences should be.
Why is it so? Why is it not available as it should be?
There are so many different reasons for that. One of them is the funding to build public conveniences. The other is even the will. Who is going to build it? Who takes responsibility for this? Okay. If they are built, how will it be maintained? You know, there are so many different issues. And even where they are available, we also have the issue of maintenance and then access, like you mentioned. So if there's a public convenience located in a particular location, how does the public access that convenience? Is it free for all to use? How much is going to be paid to use it? Do every class of citizen have access to it? Different social groups, how can they make use of the public convenience? These are all the conversations that we'll be having.
Okay, let's talk about accessibility. We see that most times these public conveniences are locked up and you can't even access them, and if you will use them, you have to pay a certain amount of money. Why is it so, and what do you think is the reason behind all of this?
One of the major reasons for that is the maintenance, right? Because if you provide public convenience and it's free for all to use, it's going to be, we can say that we have kind of a maintenance culture problem here, right? It's going to be a situation where everyone comes in, does their business and then gets out, but they wouldn't really clean after themselves. And then in order to keep it clean and convenient for the next person to use, you have to employ someone there that would be cleaning it and doing all sorts of things, which regardless of how it's maintained, there should be someone that would be performing those duties, but it should be like the basic things like washing the wash hand basin, wiping it off, things like that, not doing some very disgusting tasks that may be associated with that. So because of this, a lot of public conveniences where they are available have limited access, so that you can control who comes in and you can have someone responsible for any kind of damage or any poor use of the facility. Yeah.
Okay, and we also see that the maintenance level is bad, which results in so many health challenges. So many of them that we can't even start mentioning. So what can be done to improve on that?
Well, for the maintenance now, there has to be a kind of business model or operational model for public conveniences, right? So if I have a public convenience located somewhere, how much do people pay to use it on a daily or on a single use basis, and is that money sufficient enough for me to provide water, right, for the public convenience, for me to employ staff to maintain the public convenience, and those kinds of issues. And if that money is not enough, then we are talking of increasing the fare for people to use it, and then it leads on to the affordability. How many people will be able to afford it, right? Will people be willing to pay 200 naira to use a public convenience, or 100 naira, or 50 naira?
Okay.
And then when those conversations come in, we begin to talk about exclusion. Because if not everyone can pay, then people will make use of the next other available option, which is the open area. And then it also leads, it's a ripple effect, right? So when you're talking about that, then you know that for men, for example, it's much easier. It's not ideal, but it's much easier for a man to use the open area. Yeah, exactly. Than for a woman, right? So it's easier for a man or for a child. So this is where the exclusion then begins to come in, and then that leads to a whole cycle of like spread of diseases like cholera and diarrhea and all sorts of that.
So you talked about the men having to do their business outside, which is not ideal, and it's also not legal, because I think there is a law that binds on open defecation in Nigeria. I've an opportunity to travel a few states, and then on the journey, you know, public conveniences, you see that they are not properly built. Most times they are not properly built, they are not properly maintained. There is nothing that is actually happening there, and then people have to pay exorbitant prices to use them. What exactly is the problem?
Let me take it from what you were speaking of first in terms of open defecation.
Yeah.
You know, there's this conversation about the responsibility of a citizen versus the responsibility of the government, right? Now we know that the Nigerian government has a policy to end open defecation in Nigeria by 2025.
Okay.
How realistic is this? We don't know. We'll see. But now officially, right, there are about over 90 local government areas out of about 700 have been declared open defecation free. And one state, I think it's Jigawa State, has been declared open defecation free. What yardstick they use to measure this kind of declaration,
we
do not know, but officially these are the declarations.
Okay.
But I'm pretty certain that in any local government, if you put me in there for just 1-2 hours, I would be able to disprove that it's open defecation free. But when it comes to the right of the responsibility of the government, like I said, if you want to declare, or if you want to have a target of open defecation free country by 2025, what are the systems you are putting in place for that? You do not expect to make this declaration that, oh, we are going to be open defecation free, and then the citizens will just begin, will just stop open defecating. Do you understand?
And there are no public conveniences to make
people.
Use of. So what do they do?
Well, what has to be done now, we have to see how collaborations can be made between the government and the private sector, because public toilets, there's a business opportunity there. Those that operate public toilets usually record profits when it's well operated, regardless of the talkback against the access and all of that. But there's a business opportunity there, and we know that state governments have rights to land, right? So the land within your state is held by the state government. So land can be used as sort of capital to invite investors and say, okay, we need X number of public toilets at different locations. We have the land. We will give you this piece of land in order for you to develop, maintain, and operate public toilets for a certain number of years, right? This has to be done at a very high frequency across all the local government areas. And then when those private investors begin to come in, we can see an uptick in the number of public toilets, and then hopefully we can get more use, and then we can begin to see actual decline in our open defecation.
Okay. Now let's bring it down to the NITP, that is the Nigerian Institute of Town Planners. We know that location is very important. It's very, very important. It's something that we have to look at. Are these public conveniences, are they strategically placed? Are they placed in the right places? Because they are supposed to be placed in public areas, not just maybe down the street or something. Yeah. So what is happening? So
town planning, and this is something that we are still, you know, Nigeria, obviously, a lot of professional sectors are still kind of growing in a sense. But in town planning in Nigeria, we are still kind of, not stuck, but a bit limited to land use planning, development control, and then policy, things like that. But there's a particular aspect of town planning that has to be explored in order for us to get to that level, which is urban design. Now, urban design is kind of a nexus between town planning and architecture. You know, the architects kind of build the houses and the smaller project areas, and the town plan is more of the broad area. But urban design is like what happens between there, right? How about the public spaces, not the housing and not the entire town itself? And this is where urban designers, this is where public toilets can now come in. So if, for example, you have a public square or you have a right-of-way, that's the street, where are the public toilets going to be, right? Where are they going to be stationed? How is access to them? These are urban design. This is within the sphere of urban design. So public toilets are not a specific land use that town planners can say, okay, we need so square meters to be a public toilet. Do you understand? It's when there are public places, you have your bus stops, right? You can say within every bus stop, there should be public toilets. Within every market, there should be public toilets. Within every so and so, there should be a public toilet. That's how you can get those through town planning and through urban design.
Okay. How important is public convenience to urban livability? Because you cannot say, okay, you are living in the city and then you need to, you know, make use of it, and there is no one inside, there is no one close to you. What do you do in this condition? And tell us, because it is very important, tell us how important it is and what we can do to salvage the situation.
Well, urban livability it cuts across just all aspects of life. Like from the moment you leave your house, right, to go out into the public, to go to work, to go to school, to go to the market, wherever it is, to the point you come back, all the activities that go in from your transportation, how you move about, how you interact with your urban space, all of that is in there. And using the toilets is a basic primary function, right? Excretion, right, is a basic primary function of the bodily function. So people would need to use it wherever they are. So it's something that really affects someone's urban experience, which is then the urban livability. So if I go out, for example, and I'm pressed the whole day and I don't have somewhere to relieve myself in the city, then my experience of that city is already kind of affected. And you will see this in more developed countries where when you go out, for example, the subway system is one of the most common use of public transportation. Every subway stop, right, there's a public toilet there. You go to commercial buildings, you go to a restaurant, you can simply walk in and use their toilets, their conveniences without even patronizing them. And this is something to a good extent in Abuja and maybe in other cities. We see there are some commercial, I don't want to mention them, but there are some restaurants that you can just go in, can I use your public convenience? And they'll let you in. Yeah, and they'll let you in, you go in and do that. But the responsibility, the onus should not be on them. It should be a public resource.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should be from the government.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Town Planner Mohammed. And we'll be going on a short break. Please stay with us as we discuss the role of public convenience in urban livability. It has been the program City Pulse on Housing TV Africa. Join us after this break.
Visit Housing TV Africa on YouTube and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to Housing TV Africa to stay updated on latest happenings in Nigeria's housing sector. Follow our social media pages, like and share our posts. On Facebook, Housing TV Africa. On Twitter, Housing TV Africa. Instagram, Housing TV Africa. Join the conversation and keep up with latest housing updates.
Welcome back. It's the program City Pulse on Housing TV Africa. I am Phoebe Onwabuje, and I have here with me in the studio Town Planner Mohammed Lawal Shoaibu, and we have been discussing on public convenience on urban livability, the role of public convenience on urban livability. And just before we went on that break, we were discussing about these commercial bodies not being responsible for, you know, public conveniences. It should also be the responsibility of the government and the general public. So let's talk about the presence or absence of public convenience. How does it reflect on social priorities and inequalities?
This is something that I had touched on a little bit earlier in terms of the different the social inequalities and their relationships with the availability of public conveniences. Now, we know that society is made up of different social groups, right? You have differences across gender, across income levels, across abilities, right? So men, women, the high income, low, medium income earners, the disabled, people living with different kind of physical challenges, all of that. Now, when there's a public convenience that is properly designed, it should cater to all of these social groups, right? If you're a man, you should be able to have access to the public convenience. If you're a woman, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're a person taking care of a toddler, you want to change your diapers, all of this. If you are someone that is physically challenged, you're on a wheelchair, you are blind, whatever the case may be, you should be able to access it, yes, equitably. If you are wealthy, if you are of a low income status, all of these social groups should be catered for in a well-designed public convenience, right?
Okay.
Now, when it's not there, it affects different social groups differently. For the men, for example, as much as we may want to discourage open defecation, for the men, it's kind of easier for them to take that route and say, okay, well, there's no public convenience, I'm just going to do my business outside, whether it's to urinate or to defecate, right? For the women, it's more challenging because when they do that, they are open to different kinds of abuse, violence, sexual harassment, all sorts of things for women. For children, when they do that as well, they may not be open to those kind of vices, but then their immune system is not as mature exactly as the man, so they are more vulnerable to certain kinds of diseases, right? So it affects different social groups very differently when it's not available. But when it's available and properly designed, then it should cater to as many social groups as possible.
Well, let's bring it back to reality. It is not available. So how do these people manage?
That's the answer. people
I think the government should answer that. How should they manage?
Openly, yeah, or the
now,
money.
let's talk about the impact of inadequate public conveniences on marginalized communities. For instance, homeless individuals, low-income earners. How do they do? Especially homeless individuals. You know, or for others, they can, hold it in when they get home, they do their business. But for these homeless individuals, they have no option. That is their only option. So what are the impacts of the absence of these public conveniences on them?
Yeah, so so there are two options, right?
Okay.
Or let's say three, right?
Okay.
One, you make use of public convenience. Two, you bear it till you go home and make use of your own public convenience or any other person's public convenience, rather. And then three, you do it openly, right? So these are the three options. And then when option one is not available and option two is not available, like the homelessness,
so
then it has to go to option three. Yes, and so this is where, like, the public conveniences are kind of a fix, in a sense, or a way to reduce open defecation. So until that one kind of comes up, this one will continue exactly. We'll have to continue to facing that, and then all the effects of open defecations, the health effects, the spread of diseases, the poor sanitation, the social effects, all of that will then the legal. You keep emphasizing on that.
Yeah, you can just imagine you are doing your business and then
yeah,
that's
all
very
of that.
funny.
Yeah.
So we see that in countries like Nigeria, developing countries like Nigeria, when these social amenities are being provided, we also face issues like vandalism of properties and all the rest of that. So how can this issue be managed?
This is now the added cost of maintaining public inconvenience, and like I said earlier, where the government can try to invite private investors, right? A private investor, a private business is all about profit, right? So if I'm doing my cost, for example, I'm a private investor, I want to develop public toilets, I have to put my capital costs, right? What's the cost of construction, the cost of and then the operational cost. And if I'm having more operation costs, besides the cleaning now, I have to hire a security guard, for example, or I have to install cameras, for example, or things like that. Yeah, so when if you're talking of smart public conveniences, you will see that some of these things are elements that are part of it. But if all of that will then eventually add to the cost of building and operating public convenience. And the cost will then fall on the customer, because as a private person, I need to make profit. If it's not profitable, I'm not going to get into the business. Yes, so then it increases the cost of accessing it, and then it leads to the exclusion that we are talking about. It's like a whole web of issues.
So it's something that is unavoidable. So when you put all this cost into consideration, how would it be accessible to homeless individuals?
Yeah, then we can begin to talk about maybe subsidies or some kind of because there are some places where
of the film
not for everybody, right?
Okay.
So there are some places, for example, for public transportation, there are some cities where when there are buses, people in school uniform, like children in school uniform, do not need to pay. You can just make use of it, right?
Yes.
So that's where the conversation may lead to. If you have public conveniences, you can say for children under so yes, you can use it for free. For pregnant women, for example, you can use it for free. That's where you can begin to include more people within the social group spectrum to begin to make use of those public conveniences.
Okay. Everyone has a role to play, but the government, if it's the government that constructs, they have a role to play. If it's a private business, they have a role to play. Even the community has a role to play. So what is the role of the community in all of this?
Yeah, so one way to get the community involved in any kind of project like this is to get them involved from the start of it. So, for example, if you want to provide public convenience, you have to start from public consultation, right, with the community. Sit them down. Tell them, for example, one, where do you want it to be located, right? You can't just come and locate it there, because that's when they begin to get a sense of ownership, right? So if you speak to them, okay, we want to provide so number of public conveniences, where should it be provided? How do you want to access it? What kind of public convenience do you want? Do you prefer like the seat bowl, or like the toilet seats, or the yes, we know that water should be there, but do you want the pit water system or the pool? These kinds of conversations. So when they are involved in it from the onset, they begin to take more care, and when during the construction process, employ some of them, right, for the hard labor, for example, for the non-skilled labor that you may need some physical help. Employ some of them, right? Okay. Employ some of them as cleaners, as security. Then they will begin to feel that, oh, this public convenience is for us, and then they can begin to more properly be involved in the maintenance. They can begin to scare vandals away. If there's an issue and people are trying to vandalize it, they'll say, no, but this belongs to us, right? You can't vandalize our own property. So true. Issues like that, painting on the walls, things like that, will then be discouraged if they're involved from the onset throughout.
Thank you very much, Town Planner Mohammed Lawal Shaibu. It has been an interesting moment with you, and the discussion has been on public convenience, the role it has to play on urban livability, and we have heard the role of the government. The government just needs to provide more public conveniences in all, not just the urban areas, but also around rural areas, because these things are necessities. They are social amenities. When we talk about social amenities, we do not just talk about schools, hospitals, churches, and the rest of them. Public conveniences they are social amenities that must be provided. It has been the program City Pulse on Housing TV Africa, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Housing TV Africa. Follow Housing TV Africa on all social media handles. Don't forget to download the Housing TV mobile app on Google Play Store and App Store to stay connected. I am Phoebe Onwabuje. Thanks for watching.